Well, welcome everybody. We are going to go ahead and dive in. More home ARP training number 3 of 4 that we're having in December. Thank you to everybody for hanging in there with us. We are well on our way. So we're going to dive in today, but first and foremost, let's do the promise of community action. So join me if you are able. Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. Thanks, everybody. Promise of community action to kick us off on this snowy Tuesday afternoon. So just a couple of quick reminders, again, just to kind of ground us all in the same place. We're learning, folks. This is a brand new program. Everybody's learning. We don't know what we don't know, but we're spending this really intentional time together. We're going to keep hanging out together. We're going to have bi-weekly staff meetings for the folks working directly with the program. We're going to have monthly fiscal meetings. So lots of learning opportunities. So please don't think these 4 trainings that we're doing in December are one and done. We're learning together. Ground rules, remember, we're just practicing and giving one another grace and kindness, patience. We're all part of the same team. In particular for today, it is going to be so stinking tempting, but let's try to avoid rabbit holes where we can and not get too caught up in what if scenarios, because we're going to be talking about a lot of different policies. So just a quick overview. Remember Home ARP. This is going to be a 2-year program. We don't have any portals as part of this. We are going to be paying rents to landlords. Lots of cool things happening here, folks. And what we're doing with this program is really establishing a baseline and working with Housing Finance Agency to expand future funding opportunities. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this next slide because we're diving into that later. But I want to remind us all that this is more resources, less people. More resources, less people. Key message of Home ARP. And as promised, the policy manual is coming very soon to an email inbox near you. It has gone through extensive review at the Housing Finance Agency level, and we are in the process of making their updates and changes, and then we feel pretty good about where we're at and looking forward to getting that out to everybody. Documentation, we're not going to get away from it. We've embraced it. We're learning it. We understand it. Data, we know it matters. We know it's critical. We're embracing it. We're going to knock it out of the park. Staff trainings, again, we're going to do, we've done, this will be third of number of 4 total trainings that we're going to be doing in December. Today, we're going to be diving into a little bit more of the policy work. And then next Tuesday, when we're together, going to be talking about all things technology, CAP 60, SharePoint, all kinds of good stuff. When we met with Jen Henderson last week, our last training, she reviewed for us all of the forms that we're going to be utilizing. And actually, I shouldn't say that, folks. I shouldn't say all the forms. Believe it or not, there's a few more forms that are coming our way here. But she reviewed all of these forms that you see on this screen, and we know that these are all going to be key components of participant files. So we are going to move into some policy discussion now. And okay. All right, so just kind of grounding us all in the same place of the various roles. There's a lot of players at the table in the Home ARP program, which is really exciting. It's a huge statewide program. So what is CAP-ND up to? What are you folks up to at the CAP agencies? What is Housing Finance Agency up to? So Housing Finance Agency, that is our main funder. They are going to be doing all things compliance. They're going to monitor CAP-ND. They're the rules people. The CAP-ND, that's myself. That's soon to be Safari. That's Holly, and that's Faith. We are the primary grantee on this home art program. We're responsible for program administration, HMIS, and we're required to monitor all of you. You folks at the ground level are the subgrantees. You are responsible for program deployment, and most importantly, you are providing the direct client services. I want us all to please remember that collaboration and good faith effort is going to be the key to success here. We have done a lot of statewide programs together. I have no doubt that we're going to knock this out of the park, but we really need to make sure that we have mutual trust, that we're all being accountable, and that we are engaging in timely communication. I've said on each of the trainings, knowing the program requirements, understanding the forms, reading the policy manual, that is absolutely a responsibility for all of you that are on the call. We're all in this together. And let's always please assume positive intentions. So let's talk a little bit more about CAP-ND's responsibilities and what's going to be what here. So again, CAP-ND is the primary grantee. We're responsible for grant oversight. We're responsible for regulatory compliance, project coordination, budget management. Our part of reporting is we're going to do all of the reporting to the Housing Finance Agency. We will collect information from all of you, and we will submit one cohesive statewide report. We've talked about the communication plan that CAP-ND is going to engage in. Remember, we're going to be meeting with staff biweekly, with the fiscal directors monthly, and the primary source of communication is going to be emails to the executive directors. We're here to provide training and support for this entire project duration, and we're going to be engaging in statewide outreach, working on building statewide relationships, folks that can help us move this program into the next realm. So who is this Safari and what is she up to? Well, for those that were at our first training, you'll remember that Safari is going to be the CAP-ND Home ARP Program Coordinator. So Safari is going to be taking a leadership position in the administration of this program. She's going to be the person primarily responsible for those reports that we talked about. She's going to really lead a lot of the training for this program. And I hesitate, Safari, to say, and most importantly, because each of your duties is equally important, but subgrantee oversight. So Safari is going to be responsible for a lot of compliance and ensuring that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. Safari will also be offering a lot of support to those of you that are serving as case managers in this project. Safari is the person who should receive all of your questions. Your questions do not go to Jen Henderson or Bridget at Housing Finance Agency. All of your questions go to Safari, and she will triage those accordingly. So let's talk about you folks at the CAP agencies and your responsibilities. Well, you have a responsibility to be in compliance. You have to adhere to, just like CAP-ND does and just like Housing Finance Agency does, you have to adhere to all of the statutes, the regulations, the compliance piece. We all got to follow the rules. You're going to have to follow the approved project design, and you're going to have to work within the confines of your budget. You have to implement the core concepts of the program, and we're going to be talking about more of those. And financial management, I'm going to talk more about this, but I want to make sure to say it here because I'm going to try to remember to say it again later. At the community action agencies at the local level, you folks need to ensure that your internal channels of communication are open. You know, we talked about how Cap and D is going to be communicating information, but what are you guys going to be doing on your level to make sure everybody's on the same page? And as a perfect example, a reminder, CAP&D doesn't talk about budgets with staff. CAP&D has those conversations with executive directors and in certain circumstances with fiscal directors. So make sure that you folks all understand what's what. You're going to have to understand your TFA budget, and you're going to have to make sure your processes are in place and that the appropriate folks are in the loop there. You are responsible for reporting. You're responsible for providing client support and cooperating with all monitoring and communication requirements from CAP-ND and Housing Finance. And of course, collaboration, just like all of us, right? We're all part of the same team here, working to the same goal. So collaboration is absolutely a key responsibility. Specifically for case managers, responsibilities. First and foremost, case managers are not intended to operate in any type of a silo. Case managers are really intended to be integrated members of everything that's happening at your community action agency. Case managers, you do shoulder a lot of responsibility for the program compliance. You're often the first line of defense for making sure the forms are in order, making sure they're complete, making sure that they're accurate, making sure that they're timely. So I just want to be very clear that we totally recognize that's a lot. And we're here to support you every step of the way. But remember, it is a responsibility that you bear. So you don't get to say, oh, well, nobody told me, or I didn't totally understand. Got to make sure we're engaging in that communication, that you're engaging at your local level, you're talking to your supervisor, you're engaging with CAP&D. That's going to help us just continue to knock this out of the park. You need to do some outreach and collaboration, and we're going to be getting into all of that. Administrative duties that you bear, monthly case manager logs, making sure that case files are accurate. You're going to have data entry responsibilities into CAP 60. And all of us are required to attend the COC meetings that happen quarterly. And most of the folks on this call are already, well, fiscal folks, you guys don't need to be there, but most of the case management and supervisory and leadership staff, you're already engaging in those COC meetings. We want you to continue to have relationships with landlords, property managers, and so much of this you're already doing, right? And then last but not least, client support. We're wanting to make sure that you're screening and enrolling folks, that you're providing case management, that you're conducting eligibility evaluations, you're making sure all of the necessary documentation is in order, and you need to initiate termination processes when applicable. So lots of responsibilities for all of us, but good stuff. It just helps us understand who is doing what. So Faith, that brings us to our first Zoom poll. I'm going to ask you, Faith, to please open that up. And folks on the folks on the call, I'm going to ask you to fill out said Zoom poll. Can you folks all see that? Perfect. Good, good. We're seeing some answers come in. Okay, we got a few more answers coming. Awesome. Okay, Faith, do you want to go ahead and show us the results? All right, I have reviewed the pre-training resources, true or false. We have some folks that are still getting through those. Reach out if you guys have questions. You do have all of the links, everything that you need to make that happen. So make sure that that's getting done. Okay, organization responsible for funding and monitoring CAP-ND. Yep, Housing Finance Agency. Exactly. They are the primary funder and CAP-ND is the primary grantee. Primary role of the CAP agencies. Yes, direct client service and program deployment. Look at us. We're knocking this out of the park. Key factor for success and collaboration. We have one person who says we need endless meetings with snacks. I'm there with you. I get that. But the rest of us say good faith effort and timely communication. Perfect. Thank you, Faith. You can go ahead and take that down. Appreciate it. All right, so now we're going to dive into some what we're going to call required policies. First and foremost, fraud, waste, and abuse. Folks, you got to be mindful that we're working with federal funds, and there's just no messing around when it comes to federal funds. Negligence or abuse at one agency impacts all of us because we are operating under one grant. So the bottom line is to please ensure that we are utilizing resources appropriately. I'm not going to go into all of the definitions because you can see those there on your screen. But again, asking us to please be cognizant that these are federal funds. And I should honestly probably lift that these are HUD federal funds. So there comes a whole extra layer of scrutiny and compliance. So no negligence, no abuse, please. We are also required to participate with the COC and additional community providers. Like I just said, under the responsibilities section, we are already doing this. If you're working with the Home ARP program and you don't currently attend the COC meetings, you'll need to attend the COC meetings. Those are going to be requirements. Moving forward, though, participating in local or even the statewide homeless coalition, that one is voluntary. But for COC, not voluntary. For homeless coalitions, voluntary. We need to have good relationships with community providers. We already do that, and we're knocking it out of the park together. Moving on, housing first policy. Again, we're under the umbrella of required policies right now. Home ARP follows a housing first approach. If this is the first time you're hearing about housing first, this is an approach that prioritizes providing permanent housing to end homelessness. Essentially, we know that there's not much we can do for folks without a roof over their head. So Home ARP has implemented a housing first policy. This is totally guided by the belief that stable housing is key to achieving lasting success and improving quality of life. Home ARP has also implemented a low barrier policy. So CAP-ND is committed to reducing barriers for folks accessing Home ARP, assuring that everybody receives support that they can with both dignity and respect. We absolutely want people to feel empowered. We want people to be able to make their own choices in their housing journey, and we'll get back to that in just a minute. Another required policy, fair housing. Jen talked a lot about this at our training last week. High Plains Fair Housing, they're based in Grand Forks, but they're a statewide organization. They're our main partner here. I think just about all of you participated in recent trainings that we've done with them. We did one virtually just a few weeks ago, and Fair Plains was at High Plains was at our conference in Grand Forks. But we are required folks to document, record, and report any abuses of fair housing that we see within the course of our administration of the Home ARP program. And case managers, we're going to get into this case manager log later, but this is the impetus for us being able to meet this mandate. So again, we're required to document, record, and report any fair housing violations. Case managers, you're going to put that in your case manager log, and we're going to have a whole meeting about case manager logs. So don't think like, oh my gosh, why is she skipping over that? We're going to go back to it, not today. The purpose of this is just to say, this is how we're going to be doing it. Safari will receive your report on the case manager log, and then she will take care of the reporting of said violation. Another required policy. It's pretty straightforward, folks. We cannot discriminate based on race, religion, sexual orientation, etc. Very straightforward. VAWA is another required policy, Violence Against Women Act. I think the key takeaway here is that if we are working with somebody who meets the criteria of fleeing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking, there's some extra steps we're going to have to take. We're not going to go through all of those today. It's just a, hey, let's be aware that this policy is there, and we're going to get into how we will work with those folks in required forms at a future training. Another required policy, and we've talked about HMIS, but really the plan is for Safari to take care of the Home ARP HMIS data entry along with the quality assurance process at the CAP-ND level. Now, that doesn't mean that you guys are off the hook and you can just send Safari whatever obliterated paperwork you want to send over. You absolutely need to work to ensure that you're sending correct information to Safari, and she'll make corrections when she finds them, and you'll need to make sure you provide her with the correct information when able. But folks, let's remember we're all human beings. Safari too. There's going to be things that maybe Safari doesn't catch. So we're all just going to put our very best foot forward and do what we can. I want to reiterate that the data is what is going to help us get future funding for a program like this. If we want to maintain a long-term rental assistance program, which we do, we're going to have data that backs it up. So it's all required, but it also serves a purpose. It doesn't just get entered into HMIS and then die on the vine. It's has very, very intentional purposes. Okay, so those are pretty much all of the required policies, give or take. So how are clients even going to find out about the Home ARP program? We're going to talk about projected client numbers here in a few slides, but the primary referral source, folks, is going to be you guys. It's going to be your internal agencies. You know the folks coming through your doors better than anybody. Yeah, you'll probably, get some agency referrals. Word is out on the street that we have this funding. We all know how this goes, right? Once word of mouth spreads, it spreads like wildfire. But we absolutely anticipate that most folks will be identified from the great screening work that you are all already doing. Now, we have already accepted this as a team. We've accepted the documentation reality here, right? So when we meet with clients for the first time, We just got to plan that it's going to be time consuming, especially while we're still getting our sea legs, right? While we're still learning the program and getting things figured out. There's a lot of forms, these are the ones that Jen reviewed with us. So just know that the initial intake, let's just plan on it, okay? It's going to take some time. We have some SSVF folks on the call. I think it's going to be pretty comparable to the type of time that you put in doing an SSV and SSVF intake. And maybe those of you that are SSVF, you want to share in the chat if you could. That might be helpful for those that have not done this work before. What kind of time are you spending on an SSVF intake? Holly, Safari, I think that would be really helpful if you guys could chime in on that. So we know clients are going to be referred to us. We know we have paperwork we have to do at this initial intake. So this is a perfect time to talk about, this is in fact a required policy, but we have to have a waitlist policy. Cap and D is not going to dictate how each of you have your waitlist policy. That specific process is going to be determined by each of you and what works best for your agency. However, you have to meet the criteria that's on this screen. The program and these aren't like made up, oh my God, these would be really fun to include in a waitlist policy things. These come directly from HUD via Home ARP. So first come, first serve. Folks have to be screened in the order that they present. And again, I'm going to talk about caseload here in a few slides, but case managers are expected to handle about 25 to 30 per full-time case manager. Any excess applicants need to be screened and put on a waiting list. And I'm not going to go over the rest of those bullet points verbatim. You can see that there on your screen, but want to make sure that we're all on the same page that we have to have a waitlist policy. Okay, when somebody presents for the first time, and we talked about this 2 trainings ago, and I think it's a good reminder. We already talked about, we know they're going to be here for a while. One of the first questions that we are suggesting is asked is, are you fleeing domestic violence? For Minot and Bismarck, Dickinson, Williston, remember we do have cause funding, so that may be an option for those folks. But that would be a first question to ask. Second question is, where did you sleep last night? Because that answer is really going to dictate which qualifying population they fall into. We're not going over qualifying populations again today, but remember we have flow charts. There's 4 qualifying populations. We have flow charts for each of them. We are totally, don't overthink it. It's actually, we think most folks are going to be qualifying population. We call them QPs 1 or 2, and we're going to get so much experience with QP folks. Some key things we want to think about at intake is the eligibility screening. We want to make sure that we are going through those QP flow charts, and then we're going to have to fill out an actual QP qualifying population certification form. Want to make sure that we are verifying income eligibility as needed, any third-party documentations that we might need. Safari is just waiting with bated breath for all of your HMIS forms, just like your clients are going to be waiting with bated breath for you to give them fair housing resources. You're really going to be taking those initial steps with clients to talk about some planning. You're going to do initial budgets. We're talk about initial action steps that they're going to be taking, responsibilities. What's your plan for follow-up? When will you see this person again? Again, these are all key steps that we anticipate are going to happen in what we anticipate is a lengthy intake process. And couple other important notes here. Reminder, Home ARP uses gross income. and we cannot provide any duplication of services. Common example we see is somebody is on some type of housing subsidy. We would not be able to pay their any portion of their rent with anything to do with home ARP funds. Regarding the hours it will take for,
Andrea, we can pay arrears though, right?
Mhm,
Yes. So
we
just
can,
not
and
for,
we're going to
okay.
talk about arrears. Was that you, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's Martin, right? No, that's okay.
Yeah,
We got like so many screens and so many Sarahs. So that's why I
I
keep
know.
saying Sarah Hasbargen. Yes, we can pay rental arrears for those. Thank you. I actually should have noted that. So thank you. I appreciate that. But regarding the length of time that it would take, Holly, yeah, I think you're right, depending how chatty somebody is. And Safari, absolutely, it's a document heavy program, so just plan for that accordingly. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Okay, so moving on. Another cool, really helpful thing to help us just all feel comfortable and nobody should panic. We totally got this. The other thing that we have for each qualifying population is a checklist. It's a pretty methodical checklist about, okay, I need to have this form, I need to get this document. So not only are we trying to help all of us figure out who is in a QP, what subsequent documentation is needed for each of those QPs. No, I'm gonna kind of toggle through the next few slides sort of quickly because we just went through some of these, but I just want to remind all of us that, okay, we have to get the certification form. We need to get a release of information. And if we don't have an ROI, financial assistance cannot be provided. So something to be mindful of. And again, I'm not going over these forms in detail because we just did a lot of this with Jen. And we're going to be going into the forms more and more and more and more over time. Staff evaluation of eligibility. This is another one, folks, that's really going to kind of be a continual form. It's going to have this continuity throughout the client's duration in the program. There is a participant agreement that needs to be completed. You have not seen this yet. You will get a copy of it. I'm just putting it here because, again, we're just kind of talking about what's everything that's going to happen at intake. Another continuity document, a really important document, is going to be the housing stability plan. This is going to be something that follows the client throughout their duration in this program. It's going to be something that's going to be continually updated throughout the course of working with the client. Self-sufficiency matrix is also going to be used. This is going to be used to track the progress of the client. We can use it to showcase it, as a visual tool for clients. We're also going to enter self-sufficiency matrix data into CAP 60, and that's our reporting mechanism for demonstrating impact via these matrices. So this is a tool. We're going to continue to learn so much about this. If you're already working with the statewide whole family program, then you're familiar with this. It's really an incredible case management tool. Maybe you've seen it in Roma trainings. It's utilized really, folks, throughout the Community Action Network across the nation. Reminder here, and again, we're under that umbrella of what everything that's kind of happening at intake. We don't have to do all the forms for all the participants. When we get into if we're going to provide rent assistance or not, that's when more forms are going to play a role here. Remember, we also have to be mindful of the differences between services that we can provide based on housing status. This is a key point that Jen discussed with us last week, and she keeps reiterating this. So we all do need to be familiar. A lot of our data and even our timesheets are going to be tracked based on if we are working with somebody who is not housed, meaning they're homeless, they're McKinney-Vento, or if the person is housed, meaning that we are working with them to prevent them losing housing. Okay, so this is a key concept here. And Faith, we're ready for our second doodle poll, please. We're cruising right along, everybody. We're testing our knowledge on some of the required policies here. Safari and Holly, while folks are filling out the poll, can you please make a note in the policy manual about Sarah's question with rent arrears and the duplication of benefits? Because that is not spelled out in there. And I know Sarah's going to look for that, aren't you, Sarah?
Yep, it comes up every time.
Every time. Perfect. Faith, you want to go ahead and publish the results, please? I love these Zoom polls. All right, so taking us back through required policies. Fraud, waste, and abuse, right? What's the best way to avoid it? Carefully track our expenditures, ensure proper resource use. 100%, we are all on the same page. Again, we're working with HUD federal funds. How do we ensure housing, or excuse me, how do we ensure equity in housing? We need to provide meaningful access to everybody, regardless of their background. Exactly. We can't do any type of discriminating. One of us would like to see folks compete in an obstacle course for qualifying services. Maybe we should do that for staff at the next conference or something, a CAP obstacle course. My mind is racing. Safari, I'm disappointed. I thought somebody was going to say we have to use HMIS because you're making us. But we are on the same page. We need to use HMIS to keep track of data and ensure compliance. Number one way folks are going to hear about the program, internal referrals. Absolutely number one. If a client is not housed, what are they? Are they McKinney-Vento or housing prevention? Most of us say McKinney-Vento, and we are correct. If they are not housed, they are experiencing homelessness, they're McKinney-Vento. What type of support is available for folks who are already housed? Housing prevention. That is correct. I'm glad none of us selected a high five and a good luck. All right. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, everybody, for filling out the poll. We're going to move into more policy discussion. All right, some policy highlights here. So right out of the chute, when somebody presents for home ARP, we're going to be able to we're going to be able to provide up to 3 months of rental assistance. It's going to be a graduated scale beyond that, but no matter what, the limit is going to be 12 months. And we're going to talk through all of this. These are just some high lens items. So, reminder, home ARP is not as much as I would love to pay for all of the things for everybody who came to us. We just know we can't do it. So, limited funds is going to be the reality. So, again, at your agencies, executive directors, fiscal, case managers, appropriate supervisors, what is your communication plan to make sure that you're able to work within the confines of your budget? So every agency, let's talk about some key points here. Every agency is going to get $70,000 per year, and this is a 2-year program. So you're going to get $70,000 for TFA, and TFA is temporary financial assistance. On average, and this comes from SSVF, which is a very similar program in terms of what it can pay for. On average, in SSVF, we spend $3,000 per client. So 70,000 divided by 3,000 gives us about 23 to 24 clients a year. And these are just projections, right? There's so many things that can impact the level of clients. 23 to 24 clients a year is not bad. This is more resources for less people. Everybody is expecting to see relatively low numbers with a larger impact. But within your communication plan, you need to ensure that your funds that you're committing, that you have the budget to do so. I'm making this up, but let's say Tina enrolls a client and their rent is $1,000 a month, and that's a commitment of $12,000. So what's the plan for Tina, Nika, Rachel, and Willie to all be on the same page about what level of assistance can be provided for the next client who comes? We just want to make sure that we're all on the same page so we're not over committing anything. And we're fiscal folks, this is a really big responsibility that you're going to have. Regularly monitoring your spending, you're going to be key to this communication plan that you folks all need to have at your agencies. Other additional key points about the budget. This is all contingent on funding being available. The other thing we need to be mindful of is this is a 2-year program. So starting next year at the beginning of January 2026, we all know that the program is scheduled to end December of 2026. So if we commit to 12 months of rent in January, we'll probably be okay. But if we commit to 12 months in February, you're not going to be okay because you only have 11 months left in the grant year. They come in March, you only got 10 months. You won't be able to give them 12 months. So not something we need to get super worked up about right now at the beginning of the project period, but this needs to be part of your communication plan at your agencies. Okay. Let's talk about some guidelines for the, oh, excuse me, Deanne. Let me answer your question here. Is the TFA spending split between housing prevention and rapid rehousing? Oh, spoken like a true provider of the SSVF program, Deanne. No, there is no split between. But thank you for that question. Appreciate that. Yeah, you should have said McKinney-Vento. Also, evidence that you are an SSVF practitioner. So thank you for that, Deanne. So eligibility for TFA, it's only for the folks who are enrolled in the program. If I enroll Sarah Hasbargen in the program, I can't, go help Sarah's best friend. It would have to be Sarah. And everything that I would help Sarah with, including her rental arrears, even though she's in Section 8 housing, has to follow policies that are in the policy and procedure manual. I can't make something up and help Sarah with that. And assistance can only be dispersed when all the appropriate documentation and forms are completed. We just want to identify a few good practices here for case managers. Absolutely. And you guys are all versed in this. Many of you are versed in this. Working with landlords, seeing if there's any way you can get fees waived, reduced deposits. Could we do partial payments? Just negotiating. And this is also case by case determination. Not everybody is going to receive the same level of assistance. We're not in COVID anymore. We don't have that type of funding available. So like just talking to a client doesn't guarantee enrollment. And I know it super stinks, but we just are not going to be able to help absolutely everybody with everything. And the goal here is minimum assistance, minimal financial assistance that we could contribute. Reminder, we have to comply with fair market rent and rent reasonableness. We can't have duplication of services, and all payments need to be paid directly to a third-party vendor. If I'm helping Sarah, I can't give Sarah a check for rent and say Godspeed and good luck. I have to pay Sarah's landlord. So just some pretty straightforward guidelines there with TFA. Allowable uses for TFA, and we're going to go through each of these. We have a slide for each of these, folks. Rent application fees, utility deposits. What I want to make sure I say about anything related to rent, like if I pay for Sarah's 6 months of rental arrears, that counts towards Sarah's total 12 months that would be available in rental assistance. If I paid Sarah's first and last month rent, that would count towards her 12 months of rental assistance. And we're going to talk more about all of this here. Okay, utility deposit and utility assistance. The purpose of us being able to do this under Home ARP is all about securing, maintaining permanent housing. For deposits, it's limited to one utility deposit per utility type within a 1-year period. So you can pay like one water deposit, one electrical deposit, all within a 1-year period. Throughout all of this assistance, folks, case managers, we absolutely want you to see what participants can contribute financially. What can they contribute towards their utilities? If we are doing monthly utility payment assistance, it's capped at 12 months per household, gas, electric, water, sewer. Pretty straightforward. And we're just going to keep talking about this as time goes on. Moving cost assistance, we don't see this one super frequently, but we do see it. Again, the purpose of us being able to do this is all about helping folks secure permanent housing. So allowable expenses under moving costs would be a truck rental for moving things, hiring a moving company, short-term storage fees, up to 3 months of a storage fee we could do. I have a very terrible experience with that as a case manager, so that's just always a red flag for me. That's a story for another day, though. Limitations and best practices. So this is a one-time deal. We wouldn't be able to, move somebody into an apartment and then 3 months later pay additional moving expenses. It's one and done. Again, we're asking for contributions from clients when possible. And this assistance can only be provided when a stable housing stability plan is in place. We're moving them to somewhere they're going to be for a while. They're not moving back and forth. And let's see, Deanne, you have a question about utility bills in arrears or at an old address. The old address, oh, I can't answer this today, Deanne. I'm so sorry. I can answer it for rent, but I cannot answer it for utilities. Safari, Sarah Hasbargen, you guys are ESG folks. What do you do in ESG with that?
ESG cannot go to a place that is not where you're a current leaseholder. So
Okay,
I don't know if HomeARP could expand that.
okay.
I don't know, but that's an ESG rule.
Okay, I'm guessing not because so much of what's in Home ARP is modeled after
Yeah.
ESG.
I was
So
literally trying to type from the manual.
oh,
Sorry.
no, thank you, thank you. Go ahead, Safari. Do you want to answer?
I was just trying to find it in the actual Hallmark manual, and then I found it in the ESG manual, and I was trying to type, but Sarah's right. I found it in the ESG manual.
Perfect. Thank you. So, Deanne, to be continued, I want to make sure I have a good answer, and we don't have a solid answer today. Willie, can you define agency? I don't know what you mean by agency.
If we owned an apartment complex, let's say, can we pay ourselves? Can we put somebody in this program into one of our apartments and then
I'm
pay
gonna
ourselves?
I'm gonna grab that question too because
Go
it's
ahead.
been asked by another agency as well, and I have
Okay,
sent it to Jen, and we're going to get a response.
all right.
So to be determined.
Okay, thanks.
TBD. We should have just a cut and paste. TBD, TBD. Um, okay, so moving cost assistance. Okay, and we talked about utilities. Okay, rental application fees. Lots of cool things happening with rental application fees. Again, purpose is all about securing housing. And this has to be application fees for a place that the client intends to rent. This has to be necessary in order to obtain rent. And you can help the person pay those application fees at multiple addresses. But we do want to make sure that you're doing so only when there's a reasonable expectation that they're going to be approved for that unit. The policy manual says excessive or unnecessary fees must be avoided. Doesn't really provide a definition, and I can't think of an example. I think those are one of those situations we'll cross that bridge if we actually have to. And again, we're asking that participants contribute where able. Security deposit assistance. Again, this is all about securing permanent housing and if it is a requirement. And I don't think any of us have met a landlord that doesn't require a security deposit. But we want to make sure that if we're doing a security deposit, that this is part of the housing stabilization plan, that one of those continuity documents that's going to follow the client throughout their participation in the program. North Dakota Century Code does play a role here. For most instances, we're going to pay 1 month's rent is what we consider a security deposit. We know that there's some folks that might have felony convictions or, just things where the landlord's requiring 2 months of rent for a security deposit. In those circumstances, we can do so, but typically it's 1 month's rent. And again, this is a one and done. We can only do this one time, and we want clients contributing financially when their income allows. We can also do first and last month's rent assistance. Um, we can only do this if this is a requirement for the participant to move in to permanent housing, and it has to be fair market rent compliant. If we do this, this counts towards that 12-month maximum that somebody could receive in the program. Rent arrears. Okay. There's kind of a lot to unpack here with arrears, but all very manageable. So this is a one-time payment of up to 6 months of rental arrears. This is going to include any late fees, court-ordered legal fees that are going to, but it has to help the household maintain their existing housing. We cannot pay for rental arrears. And Tina, I know that Nika isn't here today, but this was a question she had, so I'm going to ask that you guys follow up with her. We can only pay arrears to stay in the existing unit. It cannot be for a previous address. It has to be at this address. It can also only be one time, and one time is one time. And we have a couple of examples here, but everything has to be in one payment. If the full amount is not requested all at once, we can't do anything about it later on. So let's say somebody misses their December rent and you're going to pay arrears for them in January. That's the one-time arrears. That would be one and done. They come to you and they have 6 months rental arrears, and if that gets paid, they'll be able to stay. We would be able to help that person. Regardless, it's one time is one time. If we paid their their December arrears in January, and then they did okay in February and in March and in April, they miss April's payment, and we would not be able to help them with arrears in May. It's one time. We wouldn't be able to help them because we help them with December arrears. Ineligible expenses when it comes to arrears, no damages, no administrative fees, no garage fees, no renter's insurance, no non-court ordered legal fees or other non-rent charges. That's kind of a mouthful. And also, this would have to be fair market rent compliant. And okay, here's another example. If somebody owes, let's say, $6,000 in arrears, and we can only help them with $5,000, they have to be able to prove to us that they can pay that additional $1,000. We can only help them with 5, they owe 6. How are they going to bridge that gap? They have to be able to prove that to us. They have to be able to do so, or we wouldn't be able to pay their arrears. So, a lot to unpack with arrears. Any questions?
I just want to add, we need to be mindful of when we pay our rent. If we're going to be paying rent for someone, like we can't, like she just said, we can't wait until the next month. If we're like, oh shoot, I forgot to pay this person's rent and it's already the next month, we can't go back and pay it. So, if it's on us, if it's on community action for getting a late fee, for paying it in arrears, like we can't do those. So you got to be mindful of the date that you're paying the TFAs.
I was just gonna make a comment. I know we've had in SSVF, there's been a couple leases that include the renter's insurance that the client is responsible for, or the tenant. So I don't know how often that happens, but it's something to probably watch for in the lease.
Thank you for that, Andrea. Yeah, because they don't allow us to put any of this money towards renter's insurance. So yeah, something we'll have to be mindful of. And from a lesson we learned from a previous slide, before we pay $5,000 in arrears, let's make sure we followed our internal communication plan and we actually have $5,000 we can commit to arrears. We're going to keep going back to that communication plan, folks. Okay, reminder, we're going to get into rental
Tom has a
assistance.
question here in the
Oh,
chat.
I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead, Holly. Go ahead.
He said if a client is to pay a portion of their rent, is it acceptable to confirm the client's payment first? Yes, I mean, we should be determining that they're paying their portion. It gets sticky when we require them to like give us a ledger because, that can take some time. So I would say, confirm over the phone, maybe with the landlord, confirm with the client that they paid their portion. Because in SSVF, have got myself in trouble because I was told by the client they paid their portion of rent. Turns out they didn't. So I should have done my job to figure out was it actually paid or not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what we do in many instances is we require, when there's going to be sharing, we confirm it. I just wanted to make sure that was going to be allowable in this program.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Great question, Tom, and great answer, Holly. Thank you. So just a reminder surrounding kind of anything to do with rent in this program, whether it's going to be arrears or anything, is going to be extra forms we have to fill out. Okay, so we remember that. I'm going to pause for a minute just to let everybody kind of review this slide because we are going to have a graduated scale for rental assistance. And I know this looks kind of overwhelming and very texty. So I'm just going to pause for a second so we all just have a minute to review it. Okay, so this graduated scale, it's really designed to guide clients through progressive stages of financial independence. That's what the goal is here. We want folks to be accountable. We want them to maintain accountability and be able to maintain consistent progress. And this really emphasizes the need for all of the careful planning that we're all going to have to do. We want to make sure that budget management is in place and we have resources that we can commit appropriately. So as folks, remember when folks present into the program and we spent all of that time filling out all of that paperwork, we can help folks with up to 3 months of rental assistance. And at that time, we're going to be able to pay 100%. They're going to have to establish 2 to 3 initial goals, and we're going to talk about the goals in a minute. And they have requirements, things that they're going to need to be able to do to receive the rental assistance. And we're going to keep going back to this. This is just really kind of an introduction right now, and you'll see this many, many times over. But we know that folks that are enrolled in the program, they're eligible to get up to 12 months of rental assistance as long as they're actively participating in case management. They're setting goals, they're working with the case managers, they're following through with their assigned action steps. And I think it probably warrants saying that this isn't all on the client either. Yes, they need to engage, but case managers, you do have an obligation to be responsive and helpful and working with them. That's part of it too, right? We can do up to 12 months of rental assistance, again, contingent on funding. But once that limit is reached, it's done. There's no re-enrollment into home ARP at all. It's one and done. Goal framework. So we're going to be moving into the goal portion here. So really, the goal framework for Home ARP and how all of these goals were identified was by incorporating everything that HUD said that they wanted to see with this Home ARP supportive services program. They want, so we've broken those down into both primary and secondary goals. And really what they want to see from Home ARP supportive services is improvement in all of these areas. Financial stability and income. We want to help folks ensure that they have reliable income and budgeting practices. They want to see employment and career progression, housing stability, financial literacy, community resource engagement. Connecting folks with resources that are available is a big expectation in the Home ARP program. Helping folks secure transportation. Those are all under the primary section. And then for the secondary goals, we have health and wellness, family and support networks, legal compliance, education. Now, this is just a snapshot of the goals. We're going to go over a couple of examples, but just know that we're going to hear about this and we're going to talk about goals and goal setting. This is going to be a big conversation that we're going to have on our case manager meetings. And we've identified a trainer who is on the call with us today. Spoiler alert, I won't tell us who it is, but we're in really good hands. And we have somebody that's going to help us learn more about setting SMART goals with clients. So if you're a newer case manager on the call, and I know we have several of you, please do not worry about any of this. We're going to have lots of trainings and we're going to have lots of opportunities to tap into experts in the network. And I'm looking at my Brady Bunch Zoom screen here, and I could give you the names of like 10 case manager experts on this call. So we're in good hands. Nobody worry about any of this. So these are our primary and secondary goals. I'm not going to go into each and every one of those because we would be here until 6:30 tonight. So we're just going to quickly look at a housing stability example and a financial stability and income example. This is just an example. You're working with a client and they have a goal that they want to work in under the housing stability program. And it is to create a housing plan. They want a plan to maintain stable housing for when they are done with this Home ARP assistance. So what can we do to help address those potential challenges? Like that would all be part of the goal, right? And we're going to get into the super trainer who shall not be named today, just to keep us all guessing, is going to help us dive into setting SMART goals with clients. And remember those continuity documents? The Housing Stability Plan has those SMART goals on there. So when we're working with a client and we're talking about what's the plan? What goals are we working on? Those are all going to get transferred onto that housing stability plan. So SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're timely. They're SMART. It's a mnemonic. So if the goal is to create the sustainable housing plan for maintaining housing post assistance, and it's going to address potential challenges, how do we break that down into a SMART goal? Well, we want to make sure it's specific. So we're going to develop a personalized housing plan that includes strategies for maintaining said stable housing. We're going to have to talk about budgeting for rent, accessing other resources for support. What identified actions can we have to avoid eviction? Avoid eviction. My gosh, you guys. Too much talking to prevent eviction is what we're trying to do. That goal needs to be measurable. Alexa, I think you're on the call. I just gotta toggle through my screen. I always think of you, Alexa, when I talk about this because of the one client that you had and you were doing some goal setting and she was like, I'm going to set all of the goals today and do all of the things. I always think about her and her ambition, but Alexa, being a terrific case manager, really helped this person kind of narrow down what was feasible, what was smart, right, Alexa? You did such a great job at that. But yeah, so that's all a part of the case management work here. Let's move on to the next example, and I won't read this verbatim just in the interest of time here. But let's, under the umbrella of a goal of financial stability and income, if the goal that was identified is to develop and follow a budget that demonstrates the ability to pay for essential expenses consistently. How do we make that a SMART goal? What did Alexa do with her client that was going to change absolutely every facet of her being the very next day? Alexa helped talk her down and helped make the goal SMART. She was able to, say something like, okay, well, let's focus on the monthly budget and we can have different categories that we can track. And then we can track those weekly, making it measurable for her, making it achievable. They were going to check in with Smart with My Money at the end of every week. It's relevant because we know that the client needs this financial stability in their lives. And it's timely. It's going to happen within a month, and this client's going to try to maintain it for 3 months. That is such an unfair explanation of SMART goals. I would love to go into it just in uber detail today, but we can't. But we are going to do training on it. It's coming. And many of you are already versed in this. You're working with Whole Family, you're working with SSVF, you're working with other programs where you're setting goals with clients. Don't overthink it in home ARP. It's very similar concepts. Additional considerations with the goals. These are intended to be flexible. They're meant to be tailored to the client's needs. When Alexa was working with her client, if the gal really wanted to focus on health and wellness, but that wasn't an immediate need, Alexa knew that wasn't appropriate, right? Alexa was like, no, let's focus on making sure we have goals about getting your rent paid. So we just want to make sure that they're adjusted and they're tailored to the client. We definitely can break down goals into smaller milestones. Again, just going into, we're not expecting people to change every facet of their beings overnight. Everything is intended to be very manageable. So that's the point of all of this text that you see on your screen here. Again, we're going to get into more training about setting goals and things of that nature, but these are just some example questions that you can ask when it's time to start setting goals with clients. Hey, we're here, we're designed to help you achieve your stability and long-term success. To do that, we got to set some clear goals and, just some honest questions that you can ask the person. What do you want to work on when you're in the program? What's realistic? What are you willing to commit to? These are all things that we can ask folks when they present. And again, knowing that more case management is going to be coming, just high points of case management. It's a requirement. We are expected to do this. We want to use progressive engagement with folks. We do need to be meeting with clients regularly too. The expectation in home ARP is that we're meeting with clients at least once a month. And we're working on the self-sufficiency matrix, that housing stability plan. We're checking in on goals. So this is intended to be a case management program. And remember, it's limited financial assistance, just like SSVF. It's not intended to pay for all of the things all of the time for everybody, right? Again, because I know we have a lot of folks that are newer to case management. I know Ashley Little Wolf isn't here, but I want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. And Ashley taught this philosophy at the whole family training we did last March. The client is in the driver's seat. The client drives the car, not you, the case manager. The client is driving the car. For those that know Ashley, this is an AI generated image, and I tried to quote, like I tried to have it say Ashley's name, and it could not spell her name correctly at all. I really should have saved some of the examples that it came up with because it was so horrifying. But just remember that the point of view is that the client is driving the car, not you. We do have a pretty cool case manager podcast that I'll send out to all of you. We've done a lot of previous trainings that have been recorded and are available for you. And again, tap into the experts. There's multiple experts on the call today. There's experts at your agencies. You'll have opportunities to ask one another, but please don't be discouraged if you're new to case management. I know this all sounds very overwhelming, but it's very manageable and we will help you get there. So client has been in the program. We've gone through the levels of graduated assistance, and now it's time to exit them. Or maybe they decide that they're going to exit the program on their own volition. We do have policies that we have to follow in order to exit clients. Before we exit clients, though, we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to exit them into permanent housing. We want to do what we can to exit them in a situation where they're stable and they have the resources needed to sustain without us moving forward. And Safari is going to want to see your HMIS exit form. Other key considerations, these are all considerations we need to make when exiting a client and just determining the exit plan. We want to have conversations with them about their financial sustainability, about employment, about benefit eligibility and access, about supportive services. And we want that exit plan to be a personalized exit plan, right? What works for one person doesn't work for absolutely everybody. So we'll just want to make sure that we have, when we can, right, a personalized exit plan. We do know that folks will leave on their own volition. Okay, we're doing really, really well on time, which is great. We wanted to be able to open it up for some conversation. Faith, I think at this point, could you please deploy the final Zoom poll? And we'll take a few minutes, folks, to answer that poll. We see a few more answers come in. Faith, we'll give it just a couple more seconds, then we'll publish it. All right, Faith, I think I don't see any new ones coming in. All right, so what is a critical step in the TFA budget planning? Tracking and adjusting the spending. Yes, we are 100%. We all passed. Each agency has a TFA budget, and TFA is temporary financial assistance of 70,000 per year. That is true. That is absolutely true. And prohibited practice under TFA, making direct payments to participants. That is correct. That is not allowed under any circumstances. We can definitely ask the client to contribute, and we can absolutely work towards negotiating a lower cost. Maybe the landlord's willing to waive a fee. Maybe the utility company is willing to give us a lower rate, whatever the case may be. We're allowed to do so. What is the ultimate purpose of the graduated rental assistance scale? A+ group here, 100%. That's right. We're gradually reducing reliance while building stability and independence. Okay. I'm aware of my agency's communication plan to make sure we're on the same page about the budget. Most of us are. So again, folks, the expectation and fiscal really want to make sure that you are driving this, making sure that we are tracking TFAs appropriately, that we're not overcommitting anything, and making sure that the case managers and all the appropriate people are in the loop on all of that. Who is in the driver's seat when it comes to case management? As Ashley so eloquently taught us, that's right, it's the client. They are the folks driving. Okay, key step in client exit planning. We did not book farewell parties. We did not ignore their needs and move right on. We assessed income sustainability. Perfect. That's a really big expectation that they have of us in this HUD, in HUD Home ARP Supportive Services. Okay, and now our fun one. So if you could have one, well, they were all fun. I shouldn't have discredited the other questions like that. So if we were gonna have one home ARP specific superpower, what would it be? And most of us, we've got a front runner, instantly resolve housing crises. Yes. Unlimited funding. I think that would probably be mine too. Flawless data reporting. Yes, Safari, that may have been your answer. I'm not pointing fingers. It's just an assumption. But yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm gonna just share one more thing here, and then we will open it up for conversation if you guys have some additional questions. We're gonna come back together next week on the 17th, and this is really gonna be related to like all things tech. CAP 60, SharePoint, self-sufficiency matrix, which is in CAP 60. So that's the plan for next week. I'm gonna stop my screen share, and we are happy to open it up for questions. We've been trying to keep an eye on the chat. I don't see anything new in there, but what questions do folks have? It's a lot of information today, a lot to unpack. How you feeling about it? Fairly feeling okay? That's not a Zoom poll question. You feeling okay? Getting a few head nods. Oh, I see a thumbs up. Thank you. It's always hard to be the first person to ask a question, but if you have it, I bet other folks have it too. Do you think it's going to be difficult to find clients that qualify for the program? No.
This is Beth, and I'm sitting sideways. I don't know why. So
I don't know why either, but it's
I
been
don't know.
cracking
It's
me
just
up this
at
whole
least I got
time.
on Zoom today, and I'm actually, have my name there and everything. But so I would think one of the major goals too, if they're on a limited income, is to get them into housing assistance programs, as we did with SSVF. If it doesn't look like if they're at their top of what they're going to be earning at one point, I would think that's something that we would want to introduce
Yeah,
to them.
absolutely,
So
Beth.
anyway, just a
And Beth,
comment.
you're definitely no, a very, very good comment. Beth, you're absolutely an expert in all things case management.
wow.
So I really, really appreciate you chiming in.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
that. That's a very good point. Even if you are sideways and I have to go like this to look at you. Other questions?
Okay, I have a strange one, kind of. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you, Stacy.
Okay.
Yes, yes. I'm having a little bit of an internet delay. I think the wind picked up, but yeah, go ahead, Stacy, please.
Okay, so what if we have a client, that's on the program for a while and we want to get them signed up with like, say, Burley County Housing, for instance, but they owe Burley County Housing some money in order to get back on the program? Are we able to help them pay that off so they can get back onto housing?
We can
Would
only
the- Oh, go ahead, Holly, go ahead.
we can only pay that if they still live there. So if they don't live there anymore, then we can't pay anything like that.
Okay, that's what I kind of thought, but I just wanted to double check. Yeah.
Yep. We can't ever pay collections agencies, so if there's a payment that was sent to collections, can't pay it.
But good case management, if depending on saying, we're helping you with this portion of your rent. If you could pay off this housing authority that to make it a better long-term plan and give you that housing stability. We can fix everything.
Absolutely, Deanne.
And this is Beth again. I know that with housing, if you're on housing assistance and you get behind with, let's say, your electricity, you're at risk of losing your housing assistance. So is that something that we could tap into? Because it would be considered housing prevention. If they get behind with one of their utilities, they can get kicked out of housing. And I didn't realize that, but that's kind of popped up. So I'm wondering then if we can enroll them and just get that utility paid so they don't lose their housing assistance, because then they can't reapply. I think it's maybe a year or something. There's a big penalty attached if they get behind with, and usually it's the electric that they're paying, because heat is usually, covered under their rent.
Mhm. I think,
will
oh, go ahead, Holly. Yep, go ahead.
It will depend on what QP they fall into. So QP1 is you have to be at risk of losing your housing within 14 days. So we got to prove that. QP2 is like losing your housing within 21 days. So we got to prove that. If you can prove that, then yes, we can go ahead and pay that, but we first got to pass the eligibility threshold.
Right, and I think sometimes what they get is a letter from housing, a warning, so. Because they might be keeping up with their rent, but they're not able to pay the electric. It's kind of a rare thing, but
Oh, it happens. Yeah, I know. It definitely happens a lot in SSVF. But yeah, it's just gonna be the difficulty of getting them to fit in a QP. And once they do, then that is an allowable expense.
I have a question about moving expenses. Is it, are there only specific scenarios that we'd be able to help with the moving expenses? Or like if somebody's living in a place that maybe is higher than fair market rent and they're like, well, could I move? Could we help them move into a place that's more affordable or something like that? It could, I mean, like, I'm not really sure. When are we able to help them move?
Same answer kind of is we gotta get them to fit into a QP. So if they're homeless, they're gonna be QP1. Then yeah, we can do moving expenses. So yeah, again, it just kind of goes back to eligibility. Do they fit into one of the QPs? If yes, then moving expenses is allowable, but we got to use like common sense. We can't just pay for someone because they want to move. They don't need to move. They just want to go somewhere else. Probably not a good idea. We should talk to Safari first. But if it's moving from homelessness to house, then yeah, totally a good idea.
And to a cheaper place too, I think would absolutely be legit, Christina, for sure. I thought you were going to ask me to tell you the horrifying story when I pay for storage costs. I was like, no, girl, I can't do that today.
Well, or even like if we go and do a lead assessment and we determine that there's issues there possibly with peeling paint or an issue there, could we then, we can't pay for the rent or the assistance at that place because of that issue, but could we help them move to a place that doesn't have that issue?
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because it's all
Example.
about getting them into permanent stable housing, and not having lead would be a stable house. What we intend to do is really dive in to more of these policies on each of those case manager calls that are going to be starting January 13th, I think is the first one. And we'll get the policy manual out as soon as it's ready. It's so close to being done, folks. So you'll have some time with that document as well. But you guys are going to knock this out of the park. We're going to do so super good with this program. I keep calling it supportive services for non-veteran families because there's so much parallel to SSVF, and I've seen all the incredible work that we've done as a network with SSVF. So you'll get a copy of today's recordings, just like you've gotten the two others. You'll get a copy of these slides. Think of your questions. I know that this was a ton of information to unpack today. Please do not be discouraged. We are in such a super duper good place, and we have lots of experts that we'll be able to tap into to help us continue to be successful. So we're going to wrap it up early, folks. It's pretty much snowing everywhere in North Dakota. So safe travels home to all of us. Thank you for all that you do for the network, and we'll see you next week. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.